at its heart, econometrics is using data to understand effectiveness. So did it work or not?
Hey everyone, in this episode we're talking with Professor Grace Kite, founder of Magic Numbers and a specialist when it comes to econometrics and effectiveness. So buckle up and let's talk branding.
I'm Dr. Grace Kite. I'm the founder of Magic Numbers and Magic Works, and together those two bring people-friendly analytics and practical training to help marketers drive growth.
Love that. I know you talk a lot about effectiveness in marketing, but maybe I always like to zoom out a bit in the beginning. What does it even mean to be effective?
It means that the marketing that you're doing and your advertising in particular does what it sets out to do, and that could be a range of different things. I guess the word effectiveness started to be brought into the vernacular by the IPA with their effectiveness awards. But and actually, when you write one of those awards papers, it's going on at the moment. Actually, the short list has just come out, and there's going to be a load of lovely awards dished out in October. So kind of top of mind for probably some of your listeners. But the guidance is to set out a range of objectives at the beginning, like a communications objective, a behavior objective, and a commercial objective. And those can be all kinds of things from awareness to knowledge of a certain positioning, or, and then on the commercial side, it can be sales, so growth, or it could be profits, which sometimes that's a different decision, a different choice. It could be that you're quite a patient marketer, and actually all you're really after at this point is awareness and consideration. So there's a range of different things that it could mean, and effectiveness really means that it does that. Whatever it was you set out, that happens afterwards.
Yeah. And I think it brings us a bit because obviously everything that has to do with measuring effects of advertising and brand building and all of this stuff gets into the weeds of what is called econometrics sometimes. I think it's a very interesting field, but to be honest, every time I start going into rabbit hole, I'm like, no, it's too deep. I'm getting out again. Can you explain us in layman terms what this is about and what we need to know?
So at its heart, econometrics is using data to understand effectiveness. So did it work or not? And econometrics is the gold standard of that type of adventure, I guess. We think of it as a fun adventure at Magic Numbers. The reason why it's the gold standard is because a lot of the times when you think, did it work? You put two things alongside one another. You put the activity, the advertising that you did, and then the outcome that you want. And you go, well, I'll do these things. When this changed, did this change? That's fine. And that's a good thing to do. And everybody should be doing that with their campaigns. But the trouble is that sometimes when you do that, what you find is that the outcome you're interested in doesn't look on the surface like it's changed that much. And perhaps it's because something else happened at the same time. So, you did an amazing TV campaign and everyone loved it. But at the same time, your competitor did a price promo. And you don't know whether the TV had a really good effect, but the price promo offset it, or whether actually the TV didn't work at all. And what econometrics does is not only put alongside each other the activity you did, the outcome you want, but also all the other things that are going on at the same time. And it just uses numbers to crunch all of that, untangle it.
At what scale should you start considering bringing in the experts of this field I don't know, and I guess in big organizations you can do this in-house, but I'm wondering mostly from a perspective of medium or small brands. Is it realistic to think about this, or not worth the effort even?
So, I mean, actually, if you're a really, really small brand or a really, really small business, you probably don't need to untangle that much stuff because your business is probably quite simple. So if you're kind of somebody who's started a business, you're selling candles and you do Facebook ads, you're going to be able to see that when you put that Facebook ads on, you sell more of the candles, right? And it's not rocket science, but at some point where actually you've got a kind of, and I'm thinking of an online business here, but typically what happens as online business grows is you then stack on top of the Facebook ads that work well, some paid search and some, maybe you go on the radio or you put some posters in a particular area. And actually at that point, you then go, well, I can see sales have gone up, but I don't know which did which. And actually the world's changed. I've got a competitor now. There's some seasonality to unpick. And at that point where your marketing budget's got a bit bigger and you've got a stack that you do need to untangle, that's when it's really worth it. And I'll tell you a story about a lovely business that we've been working with at Magic Numbers recently. They sell ski holidays and they've got this really cool, it's such a cool algorithm. You can put in the week you want to go and it'll tell you where the snow's going to be, where the best snow is, and book your holiday all in one.
Wow.
Fabulous. Yeah, they're so cool. They're tidy. And they're in that moment where actually it's suddenly become worth doing econometrics. And we met them through our Scaling Up Works course, which is designed for people that are at that moment in your life of a business, and maybe not ready for analytics yet or don't have a budget. And that course does actually give you quite a lot of what you need to know. But that's how we met ID, and then they've come on to do econometrics with us at Magic Numbers, and it's been brilliant, and they've got so much out of it, and they're going on to bigger and better things because of it. So you don't have to be huge.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think that's often like, I think it's what you say about like you have to look at what you want to achieve and then like make the right relations and make sure you have all the context. It's not always about expensive brand tracking or fancy analytics. It's more about understanding what you want to achieve and how you do that. Maybe because I think when we are talking about effectiveness, very often it's about channels. There's like, you need to go on that channel and you need to do that, or you need to go away from that channel. Like TV is often mentioned in this discussion, social media ads, all of this. Like, what have you seen in terms of like evolution going, let's say, from 10 years to today? Like, what has changed there in terms of effectiveness of channels?
Yeah, so I said that's a really good question. I saw a question like this on LinkedIn the other day where somebody had said, "Oh, nothing's really changed. The fundamentals are all the same. People are still the same, and actually, the world hasn't really moved on that much in the last 20 years." And to some extent, that's kind of true. Media channels sort of work in the same way. You either sit forward or you sit back. You're either interested in wanting to spend time with a story, or you're kind of scrolling through something, so you only see a flash of the ad, or driving past it in your car, so you only see the flash of the ad. And so those things are much the same. But to say that nothing much has changed over that period is just, for me, flat out wrong. Like, loads of things have changed, but I think the most important one is that the online advertising has brought us a new set of tools which allow you to do direct marketing, to get a response straight away, to reach the right people who are in market at the right time with a good message, interrupt their purchase journey. The capabilities of marketing to be able to do that in a cheap way, in a cost-effective way, have massively changed and massively improved. And to kind of deny that has improved things for marketers is kind of wrong for my money.
Interesting. And like, I think on the one hand, like there is also, at least from what I've seen and what I've read, like with this rise of digital media, there's also been a lot of discussion about maybe we forgot how to build brand at scale, because the type of media that you put out there is very conversion oriented, often, not always, but that's at least what we've seen at scale. So how do you feel about like brand building in this era of digital social media?
So it's still super important, because, and this is something that we sort of go into in the Scaling Up Works course. because because it's all about what's the right mix of brand and performance.
Hmm.
You do need to have both if you sell online, and the two things do work together. And the thing to know is that the performance marketing tools that have come out, the search and social tools that are really good at conversion, they don't work unless there's some people to be converted, right? And those people have got to be at least vaguely warm to buying from you, because a search or a social ad, kind of by its nature, isn't really going to convince anyone. It's kind of text ads on a search screen, or if it's a social ad, like people are going to spend seconds with it. And for that reason, you need them to be primed when they see that conversion oriented ad, and that's what brand building really does. But I do think brand building has to be different in this era.
Like, is it the case that because let's say TV is like losing some weight here, like for big brands, like how do you think in the future they will be able to still like build brand at scale, because it's not easy in a very splintered landscape?
Yeah, and it's true, and I think this is actually a very, very worrying thing for marketing, that TV isn't able to do what it used to do at the scale it used to be able to do it. And I've looked at the data on Barb for this recently, and you used to always be able to say, oh yeah, 16 to 34s don't watch TV that much anymore, but you can get them on BVOD, but everybody else is still there. And even that isn't true now. If you look at my parents' age group are watching Netflix, and you can see that in Barb, that the linear watching, the linear viewing for even those age groups is declining quite rapidly. And at the same time, as you say, a whole stack of new channels is available that can be used in lots of different ways. I think it's something that we as an industry, as a marketing industry, have to accept. There's no going back. There's no sort of saying, if only we could make funnier ads on TV, we could go back to how things used to be. That isn't the way it's going to be. Like the nostalgia isn't helping anyone. And I think that how we have to accept that there are lots and lots of different channels, and to accept but to remember that there are synergies between channels, and that has been proven. Media plans that use sort of 5 channels work better on an ROI basis than media plans that only use 1 or 2. And so with those synergies, and with lots and lots of media channels at our disposal, the challenge for brand building in the future is how to stitch together lots and lots of little exposures on lots and lots of different places into something that adds up to a brand experience. And that, I think, is the challenge that future marketers will have to be able to tackle to do brand building, and therefore successful marketing well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw this stat yesterday where it said like YouTube has overthrown Netflix in terms of like audience and watch time, which is interesting. And I have a question related to that. Like I think what I've seen on YouTube, the channels that are really growing the fastest are often like people that are very creative, very entertaining, and in a way that's like what has worked on TV as well, and what we've seen in some effectiveness studies on like ads. How do you look at the role of like creativity in advertising linked to this?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because in this kind of modern world that we're in, where people aren't watching a TV program and there's only 2 other channels, so it's a program that they really want to watch, and they'll wait for the second half of it, so they will sit through the adverts and watch a 30-second ad. When we're not in that world anymore, we have to work harder as marketers to have advertising that people want to spend time with, and to have brands that people want to spend time with. So if you need lots of little exposures that work together, you need something that is consistent. And so matching luggage branding really matters across all those platforms. so the creative challenge is as much about branding as it is about advertising. But with advertising itself, with the content that goes into it, it just needs to be stuff that people want to spend time with. So being entertaining, being doing the right thing for the platform that you're on. So don't try and make something that's really long if you're on TikTok. And a range of different things that work for different people on different platforms. So creative really, really, really does matter. And I saw a study recently that said the best thing that you can do to supercharge your campaign is to improve the creative. So you can get, there was a ranking that someone called Dyson did, and he went back through lots and lots of research saying of all the times when something's changed in all of the case studies that are out there, what's the improvement in effectiveness that's been seen? Creative changing from something that's not so good to something that's great has the biggest multiplier on effectiveness of all the things he considered.
Interesting. And like, I'm wondering whether that's something you have seen as well, as you're like doing a lot of research, working with companies. Personally, like I think an interesting shift is like a lot of more companies are starting to develop like creativity capacity in-house because they're able to ship faster, do more. Like, I don't know if you have a point of view on this, but do you see there an evolution there as well with like the amount of channels and the amount of time it takes to produce these things, that there is going to be a shift towards more in-house creativity? Or is that just maybe my POV because I'm very close to a specific context?
Yeah, you're right to say that the volume of executions that are needed has gone up massively. Like, so you've got to tailor your campaign to lots and lots of different spaces in lots of different ways and make it matching and make it compelling and all of those kind of things. So you're probably closer to this than I am, but I would, so maybe I can ask you a question about it.
Sure.
What do you think about the idea that it will always be a human's job to come up with the campaign idea, but actually AI might be able to be the thing that tailors it to lots and lots of different spaces and produces a million executions?
Mm.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think it might be the case that like indeed like Gen AI will at least like enable people that maybe have strong ideas, a good sense of taste to go a lot further than what we do today, like because you're able to maybe generate video, 3D, audio, imagery based on what you think is right for the brand. So in a way, and then indeed, like if that is dynamic and able to easily adapt to formats, we might be able to skip some vendors in there. I think that's definitely gonna happen. I already see it today in my work, like how I'm using Gen AI. It's not like it's everywhere and it's easy to use, and you still need to put in a lot of work and a lot of thought and creativity and craft, but there is definitely something happening there for me.
Brilliant. I've heard the same thing in other places, and my hope is that it will enable really creative people like yourself to be relieved of kind of some of the drudgery of creating loads and loads of different kind of permutations of the same thing, and allow more time for humans to really focus on the bit that only humans can do, coming up with fantastic ideas and beautiful things.
Yeah, maybe to turn the tables a bit, like we're coming around to like September, October, almost end of the year. Like I think a lot of marketers are in this phase where they're looking back, but also starting to look ahead to the new year. Like, what advice do you have for people to start planning, budgeting for a new year of marketing? How do you look back? Like, I know this is a very broad question, but I'm curious to at least your point of view on it.
It's really interesting because I've had a bit of a journey on this point, and it is the right time of year. We're starting to see spiders in the garden, so marketing people are starting to think about next year's budget. That's the moment when it starts to happen.
It's good that you say that. I saw a lot of spiders, but now I will have the reflex.
That's it. Yeah, spiders, budgeting. Poor spiders, there they are making their webs, completely unaware of their significance in world marketing. um, but yeah, I guess I've had a little bit of a journey on it because I started my career obviously doing econometrics, and there's technical analytical ways of saying what happened in the past, what was the cost of that, what was the benefit of that, and therefore what sort of things should we put on the plan next year and what sort of things should we leave off the plan next year. And I guess that is one way of going about it. Another way of going about it is to get a rule of thumb. And, there are, I kind of recently did a really good review of all of the evidence on what's the right rule of thumb if you want to maximize ROI. And that there is a sort of spend 5 to 10% of revenue, and that's quite a good starting point if you've got a completely blank page. Also this year I've been doing some interviews with CFOs, and I've been really surprised to hear how CFOs think about budgeting. And it's very different in very different organizations. And there's just a range. So a lot of e-commerce businesses go, as long as I'm getting a ROAS, the budget is infinite. We can spend as much as we want as long as the dashboards tell us that's paying back. So there's no budget. Then there's other CFOs that say it's too hard to track marketing budget through to sales, so we'll just stick with the same number that we always do. And that people do that. That's another way of doing it. And other CFOs still, and probably this is the majority, go, I just need a payback of some ratio. I need I need to be comfortable that it's going to, bring back double what I spend, or something like that, and it'll be a really loose ratio, and then they'll trust their CMO to get on with providing that. So, it's really interesting actually. There's lots of different ways that people set their budgets, and the analytical kind of nerdy way that I started with is only one of those, and it's not even probably the main one.
Yeah, and I like what I find interesting in this exercise is like looking back at like campaigns that you have done over the year and then analyzing whether it's time to scale them up or maybe kill them or maybe maintain them as they are. And that exercise in combination with like always finding a balance of like, are we on enough throughout the year at the right channels? I think that's for me, it's a very interesting challenge. And I'm wondering your take on like, in general, looking at how much to be, making noise, how frequently to be making campaigns versus the reach and the amount of noise you make per campaign. Like, what is, in your opinion, there like a good balance to strike?
So, I mean, generally, the evidence shows that if you can afford it, having a consistent presence works better than being kind of off then on, then off then on. And that's just kind of the way the numbers sort of stack up in a general case. And the thing I would add to that is that you can be consistent in your creative idea. So get a good one and then really stick to it and really bet on it over a number of years. That is also something that always works out well, because you can really refine that idea and that way of doing things over time, and it will bed into people's minds, and customers don't get bored as quickly as marketers do. So I would say that those are probably two really key things to kind of bear in mind.
Like going back to brand campaigns and I mean, we talk a lot about brand building. I do, at least, and it's this abstract concept. I think we all know that somewhat it means like we're looking at long-term impact, emotional awareness. There's a lot of things linked to that, and I'm wondering if you have seen like some common mistakes that marketers make when like coming up with these types of campaigns. Like, is there a thing that you see coming back all the time that's like, no, that's not right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I think people try to over-explain what their product is. And I do a lot of speaking at various conferences and things, and I can do that as well because I've got quite nerdy material. I try to make sure my audience gets it, so I do explain. And I got some speaker coaching, and my speaker coach said to me, "Look, you don't need to explain every single chart as much as you're doing because people aren't stupid; they get it." And I think that can happen in advertising as well. And I think the other thing is that so on one hand there's over explaining, and on the other hand there's kind of wasting that kind of initial bit at the beginning of the ad by not getting to the point or not getting to something catchy quickly enough. So that's another one that can happen. So I mean, I evaluated an ad many years ago, and I won't tell you who it's for, but it was they were selling garden furniture, and the ad opened with two men standing in a forest, looking at a compass. And the idea was, don't spend your weekend in a forest getting lost with a compass. Spend it in your garden on a nice garden furniture. But first of all, garden furniture nearly always bought by women, right? So, you know,
Yeah.
the two men lost in a forest looking at compasses. It's just and that you said about kind of advertising and marketing being done in-house. I think that's the sort of thing that a really good agency wouldn't do, but you do see it particularly from e-commerce brands.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think indeed, like you see it very often, especially in like B2B, it's even worse, where like the advertising is really like something only people in the company would probably get, which is of course not the right way to look at it. Like maybe you have some ideas there as well, like when thinking about the ads and the messaging that goes into them, what type of like research or insights are you looking for to drive that creative?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm probably not the biggest expert on how to get creative right, and I would hold my hand up and say there is a certain part of it that's just a little bit of magic that comes from people, and the epic ads that I've seen and evaluated and seen fantastic response to. Like for example, we have Yorkshire Tea as a client, and their proper campaign with Lucky Generals is just fantastic. But that idea to go, we'll get people who are famous and massively overqualified and give them jobs in the Yorkshire Tea HQ, which will make everyone realise that the tea is fantastic. Like that idea, that leap of creativity, I just don't think there's any recipe for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just, and I like that about like what Rory Sutherland often talks about. It's very alchemic almost how these things happen, and there is indeed no straight formula for it. You just have to try these things. Maybe like trying to wrap it up, but I would like to know, like, I think a lot of people are interested in understanding econometrics a bit better, but like if you're a marketer or a brand strategist or somebody listening to this podcast, even a founder or whatever, like what is the starting point? Like what would you recommend reading or doing to get a better understanding of this field?
So I actually think this is a really important area that there needs to be some stuff for people to be able to refer to and get into, which is not too technical and not too nerdy.
Yeah.
And I have tried a little bit to kind of fill that gap. So there is We Magic Numbers with Warp created a report which is a kind of how-to guide for people who are considering econometrics. It sort of tells you what it does, but more than that, it tells you how to commission it, how to get it right, when you need it, how to make the business case, and all those kinds of things. And if any of your listeners reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'll send it to you for free. So it's normally behind the wall paywall, but friends of mine for free.
That's cool.
And the other thing, just to say, is that we offer these two courses. There's two in October. I mentioned the Scaling Up Works course to you earlier. Mm-hmm. The other one is called Data Works, and it's really for what marketing people need to know about data. how to make a killer chart, how to make a stat that people remember as a rule of thumb, and how to not be misled, how to ask good questions and answer them with data, and also how and when to commission analytics. So if you rather, join a kind of live course with other people learning the same thing, that's there in October as well. And your listeners could check out at magicworks.training, which is our website.
Amazing. We'll put that all in the show notes, of course. Thank you so much, Grace, for coming on. This was fun.
Massive pleasure.